What is up? What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Insomniacs Livestream with your host, me, Dr. Andrew Kim, MD. For those of you who are watching, thank you for joining on Christmas Eve night. If you are here, wow, I appreciate you. That's hardcore to be sitting here with me tonight instead of partying, drinking, being in bed, being with your family. So you really must be an insomniac just like me. In all seriousness, thank you for joining. Again, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I'm Dr. Andrew Kim. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and this is the twice a week live stream we do here on my YouTube channel. So if you are not subscribed, please subscribe. And we try to keep this casual. We try to talk about interesting topics about mental health, current events that have a mental health spin on it, try to examine them together and interact with our viewers here. So, and if you are turning in for the first time, remember we do have the ability, if you so desire, to also have you text message in if you want to text instead of just chatting here in the YouTube chat. If you text me and you tell me what you want to talk about, if it's relevant to our topic, not totally off tangent, you can even call in if you so desire to be a caller to the show. So let's get down to it, guys. So I'm kind of laughing because, this shows you how much of an insomniac I am, how tired I am, how burnt out from work I am at times, that I probably picked a dark, heavy topic for Christmas Eve. Probably should have thought of some topic that's jolly and merry, like, gratefulness, reflecting on the year, which we'll probably do for maybe this upcoming weekend's episode to wrap up the year, to bring in the new year on a positive note. But today, to some of our regular listeners, this was a topic that was asked several episodes ago. So, for those of you who are supporting me, I'm trying my best to integrate some of your comments into topics we're going to talk about. Last week, we talked about religion and mental health and had a very lively chat about that. And today, we are talking about some taboo forms and variations of OCD. Now, some of you may say to yourself, well, OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, hey, this is 2024. It's almost 2025. This is a well-known diagnosis. We've made strides. It's a very accepted diagnosis in the field of mental health and psychiatry. Why did you use the word taboo? Well, I think most of society is familiar with, I guess, your standard fare OCD, where people have obsessions, which are unwanted, intrusive thoughts that cause distress, and compulsions, which are actions or rituals, whether internally in our minds or actual external overt behaviors that we do to try to quell that tension, anxiety, and distress caused by those obsessions. And I think we're more used to hearing kind of your more standard fare themes, like I have OCD related to contamination fears, germs, almost like a germophobia, where I'm so obsessed about being clean, not getting contaminated, not getting coughed on, sneezed on. And to compensate for that obsession and the tension and distress it causes, I might wash my hands incessantly till my skin gets raw and chapped. I might clean my apartment or my home for 4 hours, which then disrupts getting the rest of my errands and responsibilities done. So we're kind of used to hearing things like that: cleanliness, orderliness, obsessing about my physical health, no matter how many doctor's checkups I get, etc. Tying my shoes over and over and over, counting things, rearranging things over and over, to the point where it really impacts our dysfunction. So why did I title this Taboo? Because there are some variations and subtypes of what kind of themes can happen in OCD, rather than cleanliness, fear of germs, fear of illness. There are some taboo topics, intrusive, unwanted obsessions about hurting or murdering or injuring people you love, intrusive, unwanted obsessions about your sexuality. Hey, did I stare at that guy too long? This whole time I've thought I've been heterosexual. Am I homosexual? Am I gay? Obsessing about that, questioning it nonstop all day long. then coming up with compulsions to try to quell that anxiety, to prove that these obsessions are wrong. Sexuality, hurting others. But today, we are going to really focus on a subtype someone asked about. Kind of, there's so much societal, I don't know how to put it, the psyche of how our society feels about this topic. There's hatred, there's anger, it's very emotionally charged. So today we are talking about POCD, and the P stands for pedophilia or pedophilia-themed OCD. So when you hear that word, I'm sure right away, each of us has a very different visceral reaction to the words pedophilia, pedophile, pedophilic disorder. And now imagine if at the core of your struggle or your disorder with OCD, this isn't about cleanliness or wanting to wash your hands, not to diminish that by any means, please don't take that the wrong way. But now the intrusive, unwanted obsessions are thoughts and questions about whether or not you are sexually aroused at the thought of children, whether you have a pedophilic disorder, whether you have taken actions in response to pedophilic fantasies. And that ends up being the repetitive, recurring, intrusive, unwanted thoughts of your OCD. And then imagining how to bring that up to people in your inner circle, talking to friends, talking to family members, talking to a pastor at a church, talking to a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to report me versus help me? I must be a monster. What will people around me think of me? What will society think of me? So think about how much of a burden and how much stigma and shame and embarrassment and guilt is kind of wrapped up to even into the concept of talking out loud about this and trying to seek help about this. It creates even more unique barriers, in my opinion, because of the theme itself. Okay. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So for those of you, this is the disclaimer before we get too deep into this live stream. If this topic, is too emotionally charging, it's unsettling, this is your chance to hop off. You can always come back and watch us later when it's in its recorded form. It'll be posted on the playlist for the Insomniacs Livestream, but just want to give you a chance. If this topic about pedophilia-themed OCD is going to be a little too emotionally charged or jarring, please, feel free to hop off. But I'm going to also say, we're not going to get into any kind of graphic content. We're going to simply try to delineate what delineates this as a variation of OCD versus the definitions of pedophilia itself, which is a paraphilia, versus pedophilic disorders. And we're really talking about distinguishing between those three things and emphasizing why POCD is really about OCD and why it's important to make sure that, because of the theme or the content of the OCD, that in itself does not become a barrier to delay treatment, not seek treatment, get help in order to start recovery with OCD, okay? Or whatever other similar kind of jarring content the OCD themes are about, like the other examples I gave you earlier, okay? So let's get into these definitions. So number one, let's start with POCD itself. To be crystal clear, I just want to say it emphatically. POCD, or pedophilia-themed OCD, is a variation of OCD. It just happens to have a very charged theme about pedophilic content in your recurring obsessions. This is not, emphasis on the word not, this is not the same thing as pedophilia, nor having a pedophilic disorder. Pausing for dramatic effect to be crystal clear about that. So let's get that out of the way. Again, so POCD is OCD. So you have obsessions that are recurring intrusive thoughts, images, urges, feelings that lead to fear and distress. And there are the compulsions, which are repetitive behaviors. Okay? Mental or physical inner thoughts or actions that you are doing to get rid of the distress caused by the obsessions or to prevent something you fear from happening. So people might say, well, how can you have OCD without these overt compulsions like tying your shoes, over and over rearranging things, cleaning things? Yes, you can have internal mental type of compulsions. And we'll get to that to give you some clear examples in a little bit. Now, last comment is, can someone who has a pedophilic disorder at times be misinterpreted as having POCD? Well, yes, that's possible, because the key is in both of those scenarios, distress, tension, fear, anxiety can occur because both are considered disorders. But the distinguishing feature of POCD is that there is the absence, again, keywords, the absence of sexual arousal towards children. There is no sexual arousal towards children. And I know they've kind of taken this term out of the DSM. They used to actually have it kind of in the descriptors of OCD, this concept of being ego dystonic, dystonic. And that terms mean it's a thought that really doesn't resonate with what you actually desire, believe in, doesn't really resonate with your core values, and it causes internal duress and distress. So again, this is not something you are actually interested in, wanting, aroused by. That is not what is happening in OCD or POCD. Okay. So for the other disorders or the other paraphilias, I'm going to throw up a little definition table courtesy of Current Psychiatry publication here, just to not have to read this off to you. So you can take a minute. I'll leave this up for like 30 seconds. So as this is up here on the screen, okay, I only really want to focus on defining pedophilia and pedophilic disorders. Again, to distinguish, I was trying to already be emphatic to distinguish this from POCD. Pedophilia is defined as recurrent and intense sexually arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors involving sexual activity with a prepubescent child or children, generally ages 13 or younger. Some people will debate about that, but and this happens over a period of at least 6 months. And then it gets into some arbitrary distinctions here, but a pedophilic disorder means you meet criteria for pedophilia, which I just defined, but in addition to meeting that criteria for pedophilia, an individual must either act on their sexual urges, so there's some action, or experience significant distress or interpersonal difficulty as a result of their urges or fantasies. And the person who meets this criteria must be at least age 16 and at least 5 years older than the child that they have these urges, attractions, feelings towards. So without those criteria of having actions or the distress, a person may have pedophilic sexual desires or pedophilia, but not necessarily have pedophilic disorder. Okay. So again, I don't want to sidetrack us today to get too far down those rabbit holes. We could possibly do an episode of those later, but let's go back to the concept of why POCD, which is the main topic of today, a variation of OCD. We've defined how these are different now. So let's get into some of the actual obsessions and the compulsions of POCD. And you can then kind of better understand the inner distress of what one with POCD goes through, because it's kind of hard, because I think people will say, well, look, the average layperson will say depression is relatable, anxiety is relatable. You say, whoa, 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 whoa. There's no way I could ever say I could understand what someone with POCD would go through. There's can't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Well, let me read off what some of the obsessions and the compulsions inside may feel like. And what you'll get a sense of is this is almost like, I don't even know that this does it justice, but like anxiety and your worst fears on steroids. Okay. And then maybe at the end, it will sound much more understandable of how this can be relatable. Replace the jarring content of pedophilic images or thoughts or questions with some other more mundane topic and ask yourself, well, could I see myself being in fear of these kind of things or being in distress because of this? Okay, so first, let's focus on obsessional themes of POCD. And I kind of view it as these themes of obsessions tend to be categorized in past, present, future, and morally based themes. And here's what I mean. POCD obsessions can latch onto things from your past or one's past. For example, I'm just going to read off a couple things like, hey, I remember I used to play pretend doctor with imaginary play with my friend from next door. Was that the start of me being a pedophile or having pedophilic fantasies? When I was 11 years old, I kissed that 10-year-old girl on the cheek. That must mean I'm attracted to 10-year-olds. Right now, connecting the wrong dots. You were 11, they were 10. It was probably an innocent kiss. And then now you're saying at age whatever you are now as an adult, somehow this translates to I was 11, they were 10, I kissed them on the cheek. That equals I am now attracted to 10-year-olds. Did I sexually harm a child and block it out of my memory? I don't remember ever doing it, but it could have happened. Oh my God, it could have happened. I just don't remember it. Now I need to go ask everyone I know to recollect what I'm referring to and ask them, was there ever a time they were suspicious of me having hurt a child? So these are the types of things. There's plenty more, but just some examples of what I mean by past, present, future, moral. This is an example in the categories of past. Now let's talk about present, how obsessions of POCD can focus on things that are happening in the present. I see a kid walking on the same side of the sidewalk as me. If I don't move away and cross the street, that might mean I'm attracted to them. I better do something. Hence, I might do the compulsion of then crossing the street to absolutely avoid any kind of interaction or even risk the jeopardy that I could think something, feel something, say something. So I'm not even going to allow myself to do that. POCD in the present can latch onto making you question every single sensation in your body. You becoming so hyper attuned to every little twinge in your body, every little change in your heart rate, every little change in physical sensation. Did I just have a physical sensation after looking at that kid? Was my heart beating faster because of anxiety? Or was my heart beating faster because I got excited? Did I feel something change down there in the genital region? And there can be misinterpretations of bodily signals. You are now hyper attuned because of anxiety and tension to every little change in your body. So things in the present can become obsessional themes. Future, let's talk about future oriented themes of obsessions and POCD. Well, I'm never going to be able to have children because my own children, if I were raising a family, wouldn't be safe from me. Even though I already have gone through obsessional review that I've never done anything, I don't meet the criteria for pedophilia, pedophilic disorders, that should reassure me, but I say, but I could become someone who has pedophilia, pedophilic disorders in the future. It's always possible, so one day it could happen. I am that person. It'll happen to me. So to illustrate, right, this is the trap This is the trapping of POCD or OCD in general. There's this fallacy in minds that if I can gather more evidence and if I could just convince myself with more proof that I don't have a pedophilic disorder, then this will all go away. But there is just never enough evidence, right? There's never enough. Because think about all the things I said. Let's rewind, right? Past, present, future. Because even if you compile after hours and days and weeks and months of evidence, well, there's going to always be that nagging feeling. Well, I could have blacked it out. I could have forgotten something I actually did. That's why there's no evidence. Or even if there's no evidence now, it's just a matter of time. It's always possible I could do something a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. It's just never enough, right? And think about then all the time and energy invested, how much tension and anxiety has been happening as a result of all that research and evidence building, and how much time is being spent neglecting other crucial parts of your life, your social life, your romantic life, your work, your schooling, personal hygiene, whatever it may be. And then how much time is delayed seeking actual treatment, delaying recovery, delaying reducing your distress, right? This is the trappings of OCD. And then you add the additional emotional charge of the content of the P portion, right? Pedophilic themed OCD, right? It's horrible, horrible. Finally, I said past, present, future, moral struggles, internal moral struggles. Does God hate me for having these sexual thoughts? What will my spouse think? They're going to leave me. They should leave me. How could they not leave me? I'm so deathly afraid they're going to find out that I even have these thoughts. Even if I don't like them, the fact that I'm having them makes me evil. They're going to leave me. So just on and on and on. Moral struggles, past, present, future scrutiny. These are the things, when I say the word obsessions, these are the types of obsessions that can happen that I've heard about repeatedly with patients of mine who have met the criteria for POCD, not actually aroused or excited or wanting to have any kind of romantic feelings or relationships with kids, yet this is the level of distress that's occurring. Now let's talk about the compulsions, right? So we said OCD, let's talk about the compulsions. Now, technically speaking, again, one can meet criteria for OCD theoretically with just the O, the obsessions, but these would be common compulsions resulting from the obsessions that we just reviewed. Overt, repetitive reassurance seeking from others, asking them, hey, that person I just interacted with, they look like an adult, right? Like you think they were above 18 too, right? They weren't under 18, right? Right? You got to just tell me, right? I'm not losing my mind, right? Hey, I never did anything in the past, right? You remember that one week and, I was babysitting and nothing happened, right? Like you trust me with your kids, right? Reassurance seeking, right? So that could be a compulsion. Reviewing and over scrutinizing the past for evidence for or against pedophilic behaviors. We already talked about that. Lots of research. This is very common, and I've seen this in a lot of patients of mine. Lots of research about pedophilia, going on Wikipedia, PubMed, finding obscure articles online. For what reason? To compare and contrast. You learn about it, you read about well-known cases of people that have been arrested, that have been convicted, and you do a comparison and contrast. How do I stack up next to that person? How do I compare to that person? Do we have enough similarities? Is there enough differences? I feel more reassured. The research becomes nonstop. The comparing and contrasting becomes nonstop. Turning down jobs that involve working with children. Compulsively avoiding children. Maybe even within your own family, because you're freaked out about even your dynamic with your own kids. Choosing not to have children if you're in a relationship. Something that can get very dicey because it's illegal. Watching child porn to prove it to yourself, to check if your obsessions are true or not. Would not recommend that. Some people have gone to those lengths. Okay. these are examples. We can go on and on, but these are some examples of the compulsions of POCD in order to try to reduce the tension and the distress being caused by the obsessions. Again, step back and now replace these themes with images, intrusive obsessions and images and feelings about wanting to harm other people, murdering other people, questioning your sexuality, bestiality, right? I mean, so it doesn't necessarily have to be about POCD. Everything I just mentioned about guilt, shame, barriers to care can apply to any other kind of charged, societally shamed, internally, moralistically, divided, tense kind of topics like this. So these are going to be various subtypes and variations of OCD. So now when one identifies or, that they have an issue with OCD of some variation, or, they feel motivated to seek treatment and consultation to see if they do have this problem, like what is really going to be the best intervention? This is plain and simple, guys. We're not going to spend a ton of time here. It's going to be therapy. The best recommendation that one can have for any type of OCD, including POCD, is going to be therapy, therapy, therapy. Now, look, it's not that one has to be dogmatic and do one of these two things, but I would say there is probably the best evidence for these two therapy interventions. And they're basically slight variations of one another, but one is cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT. The other is exposure response prevention, or ERP therapy, which is a variation and a spin-off of CBT. But basically, these therapies are evidence-based, well-studied, proven to be quite effective in OCD. And in all honesty, like, I'm a very evidence-based person. The evidence base for ERP and CBT therapy interventions for OCD is superior to the outcomes of using medications. So again, to be very clear, if I'm going to use like SSRIs, which are called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are medicines that can be used in OCD like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, I'm telling you right now that evidence-based therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure response prevention therapy, the outcomes are superior to just using meds alone. Now, using both, can that accelerate recovery? Yes, but you can absolutely do the therapy interventions alone without the meds, in my opinion. Again, now there's a lot of moving parts. Are you going to be able to find someone who has that expertise in CBT and ERP? That's a challenge. Is that person with that expertise, are they near you so they're accessible, or at least on telehealth? Important thing is, are they going to be accessible to you? Well, are they in network with your insurance so that you're not paying some out-of-network cost or paying some huge copay? And are you motivated? And are you in a state of change where you're motivated to engage in that? And are the two of you going to be a good fit? Which I understand. Many of those factors are reasons why people say, oh, well, sounds nice in theory, Dr. Kim, but kind of hard for me to do right now. But I'm just going to be blunt and say, well, that's really what's best. It really is. Okay. I really view medications in this scenario as complementary, supplementary to augment therapy, not the other way around. Now, look, if you're in a pinch, of course, I'm a pragmatic, practical guy. Is it better to maybe be on medicinal treatment versus no treatment? Sure, of course. Yeah, I've gotten decent results. We've made headway. We've been able to reduce severity and pervasiveness of OCD with med interventions, but do I think that's ideal? No, absolutely not. And I am that blunt with my patients. If possible, I want them to get into one of those forms of therapy ASAP. ASAP. They said to me, between the two, what's the best? I'd say therapy. And I do tell them that. Now, if they say, I'm not ready for that, I'm not going to start therapy for 8 months, well, would you say yes to meds right now versus no treatment? Then yeah, that's a different question. Yeah, again, I'd rather have you start on some form of treatment that could give you some benefit versus nothing, if you're willing to. And if the side effects are tolerable, So to cut to the chase, right? If you are going to complement with medications for OCD, it is going to be SSRIs or a variation of SSRIs called SNRIs, which are selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Okay. And again, we could spend a whole hour about that, just about SSRIs alone, but that's what it's going to be. But bottom line, therapy is important. Now, to wrap it up, guys, I'd say even that thought is kind of jarring, right? Like someone with POCD is like, I don't want to have these thoughts anymore, right? I don't want to be thinking about this. I don't want to be feeling this way. Yet you're telling me in therapy, I might have to face these things, or they want me to think about it. The more accurate way to say it is your therapist isn't going to want you to have these things. The fact is they're already happening, right? So the attitude is more like, let those thoughts come, let those obsessions happen, and we're going to have to put in a lot of work to deal with them. Okay? Because if you don't deal with them and if you don't tackle them head on, the OCD wants to control your life. It really does. It wants to control how you behave, the actions you make, dictating who you spend time with, who you need to avoid, where you go, whether you should or shouldn't have kids, whether you have a viable future or not, etc., etc., etc. If allowed, it can totally dominate and consume one's life in all the various domains of your life. I mean, that is the epitome of OCD unchecked and out of control. Unchecked and out of control, guys. Okay? So to sum it up, it is important to recognize that POCD is distinct from pedophilia, pedophilic disorders. This is a variation of OCD, and it is a very, very treatable condition. So if you are going through this, or you know someone who's going through this, please hear me loud and clear that seeking treatment is crucial, and seeking treatment will allow a clear path to recovery. I mean, there is a clear path to recovery, and recovery odds are very high. Okay. All right. Well, I know that was kind of a heavy topic for Christmas Eve. This is going to be the most awkward segue in the world. But for those of you who are still hanging out, I see there are several people. What are your Christmas plans tomorrow? Because for those of you on the East Coast, it is 12:03 in the morning. So let me be one of the first for those of you East Coasters out there. Merry Christmas from me, Dr. Andrew Kim. For those of you in the Midwest and the West Coast, Mountain Time, in an hour, Merry Christmas. So early Merry Christmas to all of you. And I think for those of you who joined in, we have several people hopping in and out over the course of today's video. I appreciate you stopping by right before Christmas. So what are your, I know this is, like I said, this is the worst segue in the world. We're talking about pedophilia-themed OCD. Now I'm asking you what your Christmas plans are, but it is what it is, guys. We're mature adults, and we can go from heavy topics to lighthearted and kind of end it on a more positive note. So minus going to sleep for all of you insomniacs who are still listening. I even saw someone join right now. When you wake up in several hours, what are your Christmas Day plans? I'm going to have a low-key Christmas this year. I have parents and one brother. They're off in the warm Dominican right now. I'd rather be in warm weather than the cold winters of Chicago, but it's actually not that bad right now in the Chicago area. It's 30-something, which is pretty good. I'll take that any day in an Illinois winter. Got another brother. Shout out to my brother, Michael, who's out there in the Milwaukee area. I think he's having a low-key Christmas. He's been working all week, so he gets one day off tomorrow from the hospital. So it sounds like he has a low-key Christmas. We'll see if we're going to hang out at all or not. But tomorrow, let's see, low-key, my wife and my son, Tyler, we're going to wake up, watch Tyler open up some gifts, have a quiet Christmas morning, just be grateful and revel in the fact that I'm not working, that I have a day to breathe, and a day to breathe with my loved ones, with my wife and kid, the two most important people in my life, right? And then, my sister-in-law my wife's sister. We're going to go out for a Korean barbecue dinner. There's some Asian restaurants that are still open on Christmas, and we're going to the city to a Korean barbecue grill place that we've never tried before. Seems like it got good reviews. And we are going to stuff our faces with Korean barbecue to wrap up Christmas Day. That's what we got going on. So Jen, thank you for staying up so late. Also, Jen from Wisconsin. So my brother's out there in the Milwaukee area. So Jen, well, early Merry Christmas to you. Hopefully you get to sleep soon. So Jen says Christmas with my adult children in the morning. Then we go out to my parents to start the mess all over again. Absolutely. And then Jen also says in Wisconsin, nice mild winter so far. Absolutely. So Jen, I was out there. I mean, it's really almost still Illinois, but my son and I, we were out at Wilmot. Hard to really call it a mountain. More of a hill, but we were out at Wilmot yesterday, Jen. I don't know if you head out over in that area. We went inner tubing. So I am the worst with winter sports. So I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I used to do taekwondo and some other sports growing up. I mean, I was halfway decent at basketball, but you take me above the ground by even like a half inch or an inch, I can't ice skate for a lick. I mean, you see me at 42 years old clutching for dear life. If there was such a thing as some kind of phobia of ice rinks, I don't know what the technical term for ice skating phobia would be, but that I mean, I am the worst. I'm just like, I don't know what it is. I'm like, I would fall down, slip, and hit my butt on the ice, but I don't know what it is. At age 40 something, I'm still clinging on for dear life. You could ask my wife; she just cracks up, just like, who is this guy and what is he doing? But I I can't ski worth a lick, snowboard worth a lick, ice skate worth a lick, but I got to live out my inner child and went inner tubing. At the very least, I could sit down on an inflatable, and we had fun. Made the most of it, and we had fun with inner tubing at Wilmot. So shout out. Oh, so near the Lake Geneva area. Beautiful area. Very beautiful area, Jen. Well, to you and your family, your adult kids, and to to your parents, I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I hope that there's not too much drama and stress, and hope you get to really just be in the moment, enjoy it with the family, with your kids, just revel in it. So, I really wish you and your fam the best, and hope that you make some good memories. Amidst the chaos, I hope you make some memories and you have some good time in between all that, Jen, in all seriousness. So thank you so much for joining in and sharing your Christmas plans as well. So, no, thank you for sharing. So, on that note, guys, again, this is a rare week where I'm off for work. So, I will try my best. For sure, we're still going to do our Saturday night episode of the Insomniacs Livestream. More than likely, I'll debate a little bit in the next few days. Thank you, Jen. Thanks for the wishes to my family. We're probably going to do kind of a look back, maybe talk a little bit about mindfulness, maybe about gratefulness about the year, maybe talk about motivation, what our goals for 2025. We might as well get a jump start versus having to do it on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day itself. So possibly we'll do that. We'll see how much time I have amidst the holiday chaos, but because I'm off this week, possibly, maybe we'll do a bonus. I'll have to debate whether it's a Friday night versus a Sunday night bonus live stream episode, but we'll try our best to do at least one extra one this week since I have extra energy and extra sleep. So Jen says, if you would like a topic, how long COVID affects mental health. I lost my sense of smell, and I swear I smell things all the time. It's getting old. Oh yeah, that is an interesting topic. I'll have to see. At least for mental health, the earworm place. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, so mental health wise, obviously, they talk about long COVID, and as part of long COVID, in addition to the physical aspects, right? There's debate about effects on cognition, kind of this haze or almost kind of this like brain fog or malaise that occurs cognitively speaking, reports about mood, etc. I will say, and not to sound vague, it's still a bit controversial in terms of some of the mental health, ramifications. And, when you look at the literature, you're going to find journals that say it one way or the other. Some are going to say, yes, there is enough evidence. Others will say no. So I think half the time people, even from a research perspective, don't even want to touch the topic, because it's so politicized to some degree. But yeah, I'll take a look. If there's something concrete that I could find in either direction, or enough publications to go for and against to create a lively debate at the very least, to maybe have viewers like yourself maybe hop on and chime in to give us anecdotes, so we could even just hear it from both sides. Again, we've done several episodes where we've done, tried to do fair and balanced kind of things, where gotten to hear people's perspectives about the UHC, the United Healthcare shooting, and hearing perspectives of both sides who can understand the anger, and others who say it's mortifying to see people glorifying the shooter. So, we try to do it fair and balanced here. So, oh no, yeah, I don't mind getting into it, Jen, about it's more, I would just say, it's fascinating. Like, medical journals are not immune at this point to, well, I shouldn't say at this point. I think it's always been the case, but I think even more than ever, I would say personally, my point of view is politics and political agendas have infiltrated medical literature more than ever, I would say, in the past decades, meaning statisticians can basically conclude whatever they want at this point, if that makes sense. And you could literally, if you get a group of very savvy statisticians, you could literally skew the outcome or the interpretation. I wouldn't say all the time, but I mean, when there is gray, that's the more accurate way to put it. When there is even a smidge of gray, depending on what team of statisticians you've compiled, you could spin the conclusion of a study in either direction. So that's kind of the way I'd say it. So my commentary about it is not that I'm afraid to actually talk about it. It's more, I'm wondering, how much validity to put in various journal articles and the conclusions they come up with. I feel like people have agendas, is the best way I would put it, and they hire people who are going to compile and interpret stats to support an agenda versus coming to actual conclusions that are objective in nature, if that makes sense. So my concern is more, can I find enough neutral in the middle, conclusions about medical opinions about these long-term ramifications? Because I'm sure, Jen, if you go on and I wouldn't recommend it, but everyone does, including myself, if you went on social media, I mean, it's such a polarizing topic at times, right? You get people who laugh and almost demean individuals who claim of any kind of long-term outcomes from COVID. And then you have other people who produce 30 articles saying, well, we have evidence that there is a subset of patients who do have long-term ramifications. The other side says, well, we got 30 articles that say otherwise, right? I mean, it gets very heated. So it's really more, that was my commentary about politicized. My concern is more, can I even find good literature out there for either side? Because, both sides seem to churn out objective articles that really have more of a agenda of proving their point versus actually adding to knowledge base, the field of medicine, which is true of everything, not just the topic of COVID. I mean, I said in one of my previous episodes that was entitled kind of the shady history of the pharma industry. And look, I don't necessarily totally vilify pharma. I mean, I've worked in pharma, the pharmaceutical industry, clinical trials industry. So there are advances and treatments that come out that are wonderful. And then there are some treatments that should never pass FDA approval, yet are on the market to this day. So I have firsthand experience, not just criticizing from afar about, I mean, I was never involved in COVID research. I was obviously more involved in depression, bipolar, postpartum depression research. But at least from that, I can extrapolate and say firsthand, oh, I mean, there's so much manipulation and so much shadiness and so much skewing of data by statisticians that can occur that you could spin it one way or the other. And the FDA is not also immune to making mistakes in terms of how they interpret the outcomes of studies. So, anyways, I'm going on a soapbox like I always do. But yeah, I will put that on my to-do list. I got a couple others, but I will put that on my to-do list to see. I think it would be a lively topic because I think we'd get people on both sides sharing their strong opinions about long-term ramifications of COVID or long COVID outcomes, etc. So no, that's a very good topic. I'll definitely put that on my to-do list, Jen. So anyways, last call. Anyone else with Christmas plans that they want to talk about? If not, we're going to call it a night. And then, like I said, for sure, this Saturday, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, we'll be doing our usual Saturday time slot for the next episode of the Insomniacs Livestream. But like I said, I will be on the lookout. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the playlist for the Insomniacs Livestream playlist. Because we'll try to do our best to throw in at least one bonus live stream, whether Friday or Sunday of this week, before I get back to the grind of working again next week. So for those of you who've tuned in, for those of you who are watching this recording, I hope you got something useful, at least learned some intriguing pearls of wisdom about an interesting and very stigmatized variation of OCD, POCD. This is Dr. Andrew Kim. Thank you again for joining to the Insomniacs Livestream. And for those of you still watching, go to sleep. And I should probably go to sleep as well soon as well. So thank you for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for the next episode later this week. Have a good night, everybody. Be safe out there.